Hello. It's Memorial Day. As promised, I am back sans robe into whatever that is, an old tablecloth, it seems. I'm not a complete layabout. Contrary to some comments here on the Facebooks, I don't spend every single day wrapped up in a robe drinking coffee. I do change, usually right around now, and switch over from coffee to something frosty and delightful. I hope you're having a reflective and grateful Memorial Day. This is a 5-minute story that I think is appropriate for the occasion. Not a Memorial Day story per se, but one that I wrote a couple of months ago over on mikerowe.com/podcast, where all these stories reside, and I just thought it would be fitting to share this one with you today. Are you ready? Be curious to know how many of you can figure out who it is I'm talking about before I get to the end. That's how these things work. And this is how this story goes. Wilson was a natural athlete. Wiry and quick, he excelled at baseball and believed his best shot at getting out of Abilene would come with a bat and a glove. So, when the minor league baseball teams of Central Kansas announced open tryouts, Wilson was there. With coaches and scouts watching from the stands, Wilson jogged out into center field and began shagging fly balls. He covered a lot of ground and impressed everybody with good speed and a reliable arm. At the plate, he was even more impressive. After crushing a few dozen line drives deep into left field and a few more over the outfield fence, Wilson was offered a contract on the spot. In his first year, Wilson batted .355 and made 0 errors. With stats like that, Wilson was on his way to the majors, maybe even to the Hall of Fame. Meanwhile, his good friend David was on his way to the dairy. Like Wilson, David was a gifted athlete and looking for a way out of Abilene, but David also wanted a college education, and he knew his only hope of getting into a decent school was on an athletic scholarship. To remain eligible, though, David could not play baseball for money. So, while Wilson was getting paid to pursue his dream on the diamond, David was surrounded by cowls, hoping to hear back from a good school that needed a talented athlete. When the call finally came, it came from West Point. David got to New York as quickly as he could, where, to his surprise, he was not offered a spot on the baseball team, but rather the Army's football team. David's heart was set on baseball, but if football got him out of Abilene and into a decent school, football it was. On the admission form, however, there was a statement that gave him pause. It read, quote, "I do hereby swear on my honor that I have never been paid to play any organized sport." David thought about his good friend, Wilson, and considered the consequences of doing what you love. Wilson would never be able to play college ball simply because he'd been paid a few bucks to play it someplace else. Seemed a strange and unfair policy, especially for colleges hoping to attract the best and brightest. David glanced up at the West Point Cadet Code displayed on a large banner that hung on the wall. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Then David signed his name to the admission form and began one of the most storied careers in military history. Upon graduation in 1915, David was commissioned as a second lieutenant and put in charge of training tank commanders. He became friendly with a guy named George Patton. By the end of World War I, David was a major. He was accepted at Fort Leavenworth's Command and General Staff College and graduated first in his class. He became friendly with a guy named Douglas MacArthur. By the end of World War II, David was organizing the Allied invasion of North Africa, overseeing the Third Army, and reporting to a guy named Harry Truman. Not bad. But what about Wilson? Did Wilson ever make it to the Hall of Fame? Well, the details of his career are not so easy to verify, partly because there's no evidence that Wilson ever actually existed. According to the books, there was a young man from Abilene who called himself Wilson, who played center field for a minor league team in Kansas called, ironically, the Soldiers, for just 9 games. That explains why his stats were so impressive. After that, the man called Wilson vanished from existence, just as the cadet called David began playing football for West Point. Coincidence? No way. The evidence is overwhelming. West Point's most accomplished graduate played professional baseball under an assumed name and then lied about it to the most prestigious military school in the country. And all I can say is, thank God he got away with it. Think about it. If West Point had learned that David played professional baseball, they would have denied admission to the future general that organized D-Day. Had they discovered he lied on his actual application, they would have expelled the man who went on to win the Second World War. And had his political adversaries learned that David violated West Point's cadet code, who knows? Our 34th president might have become someone other than Dwight David Eisenhower. One thing's for certain. In the bottom of the ninth, when the chips were down, America didn't need a center fielder who could hit. We needed a general who could lead. Well, we got one. A poor kid from Kansas who really wanted to play baseball, but settled for saving the world. Anyway, that's the way I heard it. Have a great Memorial Day. See you around.